Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the War Room, which is our interview series as part of the Clone Star Pod. I am one of your hosts, Sean Ferrick. Returning to the podcast this week is our lovely co-host, Mike. How are you, Mike? Are you well?
I'm good, thank you, Sean.
Now, we are being joined this week by a man who, if you just keep going back in Star Trek history, you'll see his name. He's just involved in all of it. Insurrection, Generations, DS9. And let us not forget the fan club Unistar that was set up in the 1970s as well, which is some of his best work. You might most recently will have seen his work on Star Trek Picard. Geoffrey Mandel, it is a genuine pleasure to welcome you here. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
As I say, the pleasure is all mine. Do you know what? Actually, I have to say really quickly, sometimes people say that and we're just like, but we're the fans. We're just delighted that you've agreed to talk to us. Thank you so much.
I'm just a fan too. It's the same. I mean, I'm a fan who managed to get a job. So,
and you give hope to the rest of us. And I like this. And, you know, I say this, but kind of switching swiftly to my wonderful colleague, Mike here, I think you're even a little bit further along than I am.
In what way? Oh, well, I suppose so.
In terms of your pro credentials?
Well, I won't quite go that far just yet. I'm going to say yet, because there's still a few left to go. But yes, if you did not aware, I did do a graphic to expand Geoffrey's work that he did on Picard earlier this year, which was kind of a surprise. You randomly get a DM on Twitter from Dave Blass, you don't ignore it. And when he says, I'm just going to bung you this Illustrator file, can you expand upon it? And you get no context. And then only after you've done it, he says, oh yeah, Geoffrey Mandel did that. And I'm like, what?
And Geoffrey, how does it feel knowing Mike's muscling in on your turf?
Oh, it's fine. I mean, the whole exciting part of Star Trek, and certainly about the fan artists part of Star Trek, is that it's inclusive. It brings people in. That's how I came in as a teenager and as a younger guy. And it just draws you in. You can add your own little details. Dave Blass, who, if you don't know, is the production designer of the seasons 2 and 3 of Picard, has just been great about bringing in fan artists and people who love Star Trek and never thought they would have the chance to even be slightly involved. But like he brought them in big time, and no apologies. And as a fan myself, I can imagine how wonderful that must be.
I could, like that. I can well imagine. And I think at this stage, I'd say most of the audience will agree. You can see the impact of bringing in, people with a passion for Trek as a property has made a difference in particularly the aesthetic of Star Trek Picard, which is, again, I hasten to say, that's not to say that, the other shows that are on at the moment are any better or any worse, just different. That's all. Just a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Yeah. And you can see the difference in season 3 of Picard as opposed to season 2, because season 3 is when the floodgates were opened, and basically a lot of people got to put their mark on Star Trek in a nice way.
That is actually season 3. I don't remember, obviously it's not that long ago, but I remember sitting down to watch the first episode, and it felt like there was this concerted effort behind the scenes of going, and you get your passion project, and you get your passion project, and it was a lot of fun.
That's certainly how it felt. I mean, it was also great being reunited with all these people who had worked with me on other Star Trek projects, like Mike Okuda and Doug Drexler, and Alan Kobayashi came on for a bit, Monica Fedrick, all people who've worked on Star Trek series and movies. So it was a little bit like old home week, but I was at home, so it was all via Zoom. But still, very nice.
Of course, yeah. Yes. The great year we never speak of was sort of
which was mostly
bang in the middle.
But it was still going on in season 3. People were still wearing masks on set, and we were still being cautious.
There's a great photo actually that did the rounds there, where I think it's Todd Stashwick, Jin Maley, Ashley Chestnut, and possibly Stephanie as well, or it's just the fact that they're just looking at their phones and they're all masked up and everyone's got their division masks on as well, and it's just cool. But okay, so on that then, so you get the phone call from Dave Blass. What does that sound like, and what's where are you at that time? It's a bit like asking where were you when you heard the news, but basically where were you when you heard the news?
I will tell you, it's, I mean, I've obviously worked on various Star Treks in the past, but the most recent was probably the first J.J. Abrams movie. I did a tiny bit of work on the second one. So it had been a while. I may have been involved with several of the aborted Star Trek 4 movie projects. There were two of them that I might have been involved with that didn't happen. So if we want spoilers, that would probably be the arena. But they didn't happen. They were, what could have been. And then, just working as I always do, done a lot of different shows over the years, some science fiction, some not. After the pandemic, I was doing Kaminsky Method. What else? A couple other Apple Plus shows. And got an email from Doug Drexler, who I've known since we were both, he was probably in his early 20s and I was a teenager. We met at the Federation Trading Post, which is the store in New York City, the famous Star Trek store. So he sent me an email saying, look, I'm working on Orville, so I can't do it, but Dave Blass is looking for a graphic designer for Star Trek Picard Season 2. And I said, okay, sure, I'll do that. I even said I would be willing to make the drive up to Santa Clarita to set if he hired me, which I did do sometimes, but mostly work from home. And Dave and the art director, Mark, interviewed me by Zoom. That was my first Zoom experience, so it was a little stressful. Wasn't sure how well I did. At that time, I had no idea that Dave was his biggest Star Trek fan and even knew who I was. He was already gruff. So when I heard that I had gotten the job, which was a little bit later, maybe about a month later, I was like, oh, really? Wow. I didn't think I got that one. So, but it was a lovely experience getting to know Dave and the other people in the art department. It was the first time that a Star Trek show that I've worked on has been run by Star Trek fans at the very top level. That hasn't happened a lot over the years. I mean, certainly people who like and respect Star Trek, but they kind of have their own agendas. And this is the first time where the main agenda was to be true and faithful to Star Trek as we've seen, and also to build upon it. Sorry, that's a lot of talking.
But we're literally here to listen, so it's all good with me. So again, you're part of that club where you have experience on, I'm just going to call it, say, 90s era Star Trek and JJ Star Trek and streaming era Star Trek.
Now I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a limited experience on the JJ one. I was involved early on in that. And did not stay for the full length of that production, but I had a little bit of influence in the early days. And definitely am enjoying the fact that I was around during the original Star Trek and, did fan tributes. The Starfleet Handbook was my little fanzine back in the day. Loved the tech manual, loved the Enterprise blueprints. So when I got the chance to join DS9, which was, I guess, 93, I just jumped at it, even though I was thinking, okay, I'm here in Hollywood to be a writer, director, or something. I don't know. And it was like, oh, Star Trek. Okay, maybe I'll do that instead. And that actually worked out pretty well.
I should say so. Because, I mean, you got to work on, okay, spoiler, my favorite Trek is and probably will always be Deep Space Nine. So you got to work on my favorite really? Star Trek.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that show so much.
I was PA too, which is the lowliest of lowly. Getting coffee, running blueprints around the Paramount lot. But it was a great way to see what a job in the art department is like. I always tell people who want to be working as an illustrator or a graphic artist or a set designer, be a PA, an art department PA, because you'll get to learn all there is to know about it. And you may not like it. It may not be for you. I happen to like it.
That's actually, it's such a good point, because you have so much passion and so much energy and so much drive, perhaps before you have any of the experience and you get in. And I'm sure we've all experienced where we step into a situation like, this is so not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. But Star Trek has had a history of promoting PAs and assistants. They've climbed the ladder. Look at Terry. He was a writer's assistant. But just in the art department at DS9, Jim Martin was an illustrator. He had been a PA. Doug Drexler had been a PA and was promoted. Anthony Fredrickson actually was promoted to a graphic designer on the first Generations movie, on Generations. And that's why they brought me in. I basically took over Anthony's old job as a PA. So everybody gets a little step up on Star Trek.
I love that. Plus, with that role, it's going to sound like a joke, but I'm deadly serious. You're going to find out where the best coffee is nearby. You're going to find the fastest route through the Paramount lot. This is invaluable information.
You find out like, they're doing craft services on stage. Run over to stage and get a little something. It's a crew. It's a nice group of people that get along well, and for the most part, and we learn each other's secrets pretty quickly.
I would well imagine it's because, again, Star Trek, obviously, it's famous for, it's hard work. It's great and we love it, and but it's hard work. So I feel like there would be a lot of camaraderie from just the sheer amount of hours people would be putting in as well. You're seeing some of these people more than you're seeing potential family and friends.
That's very true. The people who work on stage, the actors and the other people who are on stage 12 hours a day, get super close, and so do the individual departments. Like the art department, we hang out basically 12 hours a day, so we get to know everything about each other, and we get along. Or else, on the rare shows, non-Star Trek related, that I did not get along with people, that usually doesn't last. So, because either you leave or someone asks you to leave. It's important that you play nice with others if you're going to work on a TV show or a film.
You hear that, Mike? We're supposed to get along with each other.
Damn it.
Take that as a warning.
Exactly. But I suppose that's the same in life, though, isn't it? You have to.
Yeah, I mean, it is true, but I think more so in TV production, because bad behavior is not really tolerated. I mean, you can take a little bit of that from the actors, since they're above the line. But if anybody is like being surly or not doing their job, they quickly get a reputation and don't get hired on the next show. So you do have to do the work.
That's a good way of forcing yourself into a good mood.
Cool sets. But sorry?
Good way of forcing yourself into a good mood. Say you've had a dreadful weekend. You're like, right, I cannot bring that in today because, at the time, Ira Stephen Bear is going to be standing there, with one of those old wooden rulers, and he's going to just smack me upside the head. Perhaps. I not making any allegations against Ira Stephen Bear, moving swiftly along. The
writers and producers get to be a little surly. I mean, that's like the actors; they're high enough up the food chain. Rick Berman was famously a little bit testy, especially first thing in the morning. So it's just basically a below the line people that have to play nice, and if we come in a bad mood, you just turn that smile upside down.
Yep.
Coffee, a lot of coffee, and Paramount has good coffee. They had an espresso machine over at the company store. So
why don't we have an espresso machine?
Yeah, you should. They actually had a full coffee bean and tea leaf over at the company store. You could see it was equivalent to Starbucks, so you could just walk on over and get your morning shot of whatever. That made working there possible, I think, for a lot of people.
I love that phrasing. possible, not just better, but I mean actually possible. Yeah, I like that.
Better. But yeah, just possible. Yes, it smoothed the edges, the ragged edges, for a lot of people.
In 2003, obviously, you're working on Enterprise at this point, and you've worked on Voyager, which will obviously there'll be questions about that as well because we love Voyager. But your Star Trek Star Charts comes out. What was that something that you were just working along the way, or is this a specially commissioned project? Because as I look at them now, I mean they are basically what seems to be the current Star Trek stellar cartography is based on.
I think that's true. I actually had left Enterprise at that point. I was just on it for the first season. But during that entire first season, I had pitched the idea at Mike Okuda's suggestion to Pocketbooks of doing star charts, because that's something I'd always wanted to do and had been involved in the Star Trek Maps project, which goes back to 1980. And they agreed. And I spent a lot of time when I should probably have been working on stuff for Enterprise, working on star charts. I was kind of holed up in the back room, the storage room where all the blueprints were kept, like madly working away in Illustrator. So it was all good because I added something to the Star Trek universe that other people have been able to expand upon. So I didn't feel like I was cheating Paramount of their good worker. And we also had kind of perfected the graphics to the point where Anthony Fredrickson and I would switch off. Each would do one episode, and then we'd have a little bit of a break. So that was a good chance to work on star charts. But yeah, it came out. It was well reviewed. And Timothy Peel, who's the animator for the graphic designer for Strange New Worlds, has been using it, which is great. I mean, I've sent him my files and said, go to town, do whatever you want. And I'm glad that there's been able to be some consistency, because before Star Charts, there was no consistency at all.
There is, like, I was doing a bit of a rewatch of original series there for this pod, and also I introduced a partner of mine to The Final Frontier, and I bring them up because, back then, the center of the galaxy and the edge of the galaxy and Earth were all about 20 minutes from each other, because there was nothing to say that they weren't. There was no, actually, there's quite a bit of a distance. Whereas now, you just like, all right, how far away is each other? You pull out the star charts and be like, how fast was 1701 and 1701A? What happened to those engines? They should have put them on Voyager.
My answer to that, and I told this to Dave Blass many times, is that subspace topography is very complicated. So sometimes you can go short distances and it takes a long time. Sometimes you can go to long distances and it takes a short time. It's impossible to even guess how long it's going to do. Your computer has to figure it out. And that's the whole point behind star dates and all that crap. I mean, it's complicated. But basically, things are as far away as they need to be for dramatic reasons and as close as they need to be for dramatic reasons. When you try to apply real distances or warp speeds, the warp speed chart that Mike Okuda did, it works some of the time, but not all the time. So you got to assume there's little shortcuts and weird areas of subspace where you can go very quickly or you just can't go at all. So. Ditto when you're making calls back to Starfleet headquarters. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's not.
That's something that both Strange New Worlds and Discovery have sort of played with as well, which I've really enjoyed. I think in Discovery.
That's nice that they brought that back. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. It's so fun, and also kind of like I one of the great comparisons is that on say episodic Trek, Vulcan is at least a day's travel away. In 2009, it takes about 20 seconds, which I love. Sorry, I really enjoyed Star Trek 09.
I mean, that's one thing that had kind of happened before I did Star Charts, that 40 Eridani was pretty much accepted as Vulcan's star. I think Gene Roddenberry once said in a memo that as far as he was concerned, that was the right star. And it's relatively near. It's like, I think it's about 18 light years away. So yeah, in the modern version of Star Trek, you could get there very quickly. I mean, it's still complicated because, like, all of a sudden we learn there's a new system or a new planet in the Vulcan system with an ancient civilization that we never heard about before, and it gets complicated. I'm kind of past the point where I have to jot everything down and worry about the next star chart. But Larry Nemeczek is still doing that. He's still keeping track of everything, and I think he stays up nights worrying about where some things go and why they're so easy to get to or so hard to get to.
It's actually it's just funny timing. I'm on a podcast tomorrow with Larry, so I just want to ask him: is he all right? How's he getting on? Like, is he doing okay? Because you're so
I'm worried about Larry to make sure he's okay.
I will. Just are you okay? You know. Did you hear for season 3 of Strange New Worlds they're going to add 7 more planets to the Vulcan system? No.
But I wouldn't be surprised.
I was just looking at it this way. It's like, they were always there. They were just off screen.
40 Eridani is a trinary star. I guess there could be planets around the other components. I mean, you would think the Vulcans would have very early on explored those ruins and noticed that big glowy portal. But, maybe the portal doesn't show up all the time, just sometimes. So,
yeah. Or maybe it just doesn't like Vulcans, ironically.
That's possible. Anything's possible.
That's true. I mean, I know they're universally loved by everyone. But yeah, so how then? So I suppose to kind of focus on Picard for a minute.
Okay.
Your designs, and in a way, I'm going to let Mike take over a little bit now, so I realize I've been talking a lot, and Mike's our graphic man. He knows way more than I do. But one quick question I want to ask is, how much of what you designed do we get to see on screen? Because I'm sure there's hundreds of things that they go through the drawing board and this gets approved and that doesn't.
That is true. And that's especially true, I think, for illustrators, concept illustrators, because they do a lot of, illustrations of sequences that get cut for budgetary reasons or things that go in a different direction. Like we had about, I think, 6 different illustrators working on concepts for the Shrike. So there was a lot of versions of that ship out there that you've never seen and weren't the final version. So that I think is a little bit tougher than my job, where mostly if my graphics are good, they use them. Like if I do something that Props likes or Costume likes or Dave likes, there's a good chance it'll be used. I mean, we did a lot of various iterations of the Confederation logos and seals for season 2 of Picard. But once we kind of hit the right note, things went very quickly. And I've actually had a lot of shows where, maybe 1/3 of what you do gets up on the screen. And for Picard, it was probably more like 2/3 or even more. So I credit Dave. He was a champion for putting graphics on screen. And by the way, graphics are one of the cheapest ways you can fill the background of a set. It's like basically $50 a square foot as opposed to whatever it costs to design and build a custom set. So if you can throw up a bunch of backlit panels and do a cool graphic, that's money in the bank for the production. So they do tend to like you as someone who's saving the production money.
Now, Mike, I'm sure you have a whole bunch of questions ready now as well.
Yes. So sticking with the Picard theme.
Sure.
What's your favorite graphic? What graphic did you create that is your favorite?
That's a good question. That's an excellent question. I was pretty fond of the star chart table on the Helios, which you didn't really see much of in the show, but it was all fully developed and worked out. It even switched for the flashback sequence. I also thought the turbolift graphic came out really well. There's a monitor in the background, but the ones on the side are just backlights, and as you know, because you have those Illustrator files. And they're great. I mean, they look nice. They look like things are happening. You don't notice that they're not moving. It was a good marriage of still graphics and motion graphics. Also, I think that the shuttlecraft, we use pretty much the same one for all the different shuttles, came out very well. That's maybe 3/4 backlit, 1/4 motion graphics, and you really can't tell. It's kind of a seamless, nice look. So
I love that shadow.
your question. Yeah, I'm also really fond of the Confederation logos and the pins and all that stuff, which I had got the chance to design. I mean, that was really fun for me.
I actually happen to have one right here.
Nice. Which one do you have?
I have that one.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. I didn't design that. That was one of the illustrators who was working for props. I did design the one that Seven wears, and I designed the one that Evil Picard wears in the painting, both of which I believe are coming out from fan sets at some point. And then all the, the logos you see all over the Disney Hall for the for that scene, all the Confederation logos. That was fun seeing my take on basically the Federation seal, like repeated 100 times. Huge. I mean, you can't beat that.
I love that set. I love that kind of showcase room in Chateau Picard.
Chateau Picard was also really cool. I did some stuff that you didn't actually see that much on screen. Like there's a Klingon Art of War book manuscript for Evil Picard, replacing his archaeological book, and that was all worked out with illustrations by Dan Curry, an actual Klingon, maybe a little bit grammatically off, but close. And there was a detailed map of Bajor, an archaeological map for the good Picard that he had up on his wall, that I did, and it was a lot of fun to work on. What else? I actually worked on the original Picard scrapbook from Generations. That was my first graphics job way back when in the day, so it was kind of fun seeing it again. I basically did some of the documents that have lived on as part of the scrapbook all those years. Not that they're in that particular scrapbook, but they still exist. So
I just want to think really quickly then. So that last scene in Generations where Picard just casually tosses this Kurlan Naskios, this priceless artifact aside because he's found the scrapbook. Was that a line was that something that you insisted remain in the film? You were like, I put enough work into that scrapbook, that has to stay.
It was very satisfying, and basically all of us on Generations, from PAs up to Mike himself, contributed to that scrapbook. We all had like little pages here and there. I was just fortunate that the 2 pages that I contributed were the ones that were on display in Star Trek: The Experience in Las Vegas, so they kind of became ingrained in people's minds, like the Grand Kite Order of Tactic and the Picard Marathon certificate. Definitely my first time seeing my own work on the big screen, so that was pretty exciting. Still pretty exciting.
Two, right? I mean, one day, it'll be Me Too. I don't know what it will look like. It'll be some sort of work. Mike, I'm sure will be there long before I will.
No, we'll be there together, Sean. I've told you this.
Just keep pitching Dave Blass, because if there's a Star Trek Legacy, I have a good feeling that he'll be the guy.
Yeah,
well, actually, then. On that, I know that obviously production on season 3 has obviously been over for quite a while now, but is there... I'm not asking you to confirm Star Trek Legacy, but what I'm saying is that, kind of like where things are... I mean, because I know there sort of can't be any news, I guess, until the current climate, something is done and fixed with that. But is this idea of is everyone kind of just waiting for the phone call at this point? Because the reaction...
You're referring to the fact that we're in the middle of a strike by SAG and the WGA, so all the actors and writers are on strike, and basically production has come to a halt in the US, in Canada, in the UK, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I really hope that strike is settled soon, because we're all out of work and we're all not making any money. I happen to believe that the writers and the actors have a just cause. They're being taken advantage to some extent by the studios, and the studios are not they're not basically acting in good faith when they say they're negotiating. They seem to be kind of what's the word? Dragging their feet because they're saving money, like tens of millions of dollars for each day that the strike continues. But sooner or later, they'll run out of content and people will realize, oh my God, why would I want Netflix when there are no new shows? Or why would I want Paramount Plus when it's the same old stuff that I've already seen? So they'll start canceling their subscriptions. So at that point, I think the studios and the streaming services will have to make the deal with the artists and the actors and the writers. Having said that, everything else is on hold. That includes all versions of Star Trek. I'm sure they haven't started on season 3 of Stranger Worlds. I'm sure they haven't started on the Michelle Yeoh movie. And I doubt they'll make a decision about Star Trek Legacy until things are a little more settled and it's clear to them. I mean, it's possible, I don't know, but it's possible that Paramount Plus won't be a going concern in a few years. Maybe it'll be something new, like streaming was. You won't even know what it is until it happens. So who knows?
That is actually an excellent point as well, because I think, was it this week or last, there was another headline that suggested that anyway, they were thinking of pulling back and not spending as much money on streaming, because I think now I don't want to say anything wrong. As far as I can tell, the streaming model that exploded a few years ago, people are starting to realize that, oh, this isn't quite the moneymaker that everyone thought it was going to be. So it is going to have to change at some point in whatever that change looks like. We might all go back to the 90s.
Will be involved. I hope so, because that same press release from Paramount that mentioned what you just said also mentioned that they're kind of going to double down on the stuff that for their core audience of fans, like I forget what they called them, but like the enthusiasts, which definitely means Star Trek. I can't think of any Paramount properties that would have that many fans or that much enthusiasm.
I think so. Yeah,
Paramount that has the kind of following that Star Trek does. I can't think of anything.
Well, Star Wars, Marvel. They're both Disney. Yeah, no, it's not going to be Beavis and Butthead. It's not going to be Rugrats. I mean, they could maybe do a Mission Impossible streaming series with Tom Cruise showing up in the first episode or something, and I'm sure they thought of it. But yeah, Star Trek is pretty much it for Paramount. So as long as there is a Paramount effort at streaming or producing television shows, or I should just say content, because they won't necessarily be on television, Star Trek I think is okay. It's in a good place.
It's touch wood, exactly. Yeah, it is, and it's interesting as well, because even with the uncertainty of what the world is like at the moment, it still feels different from, say, 2005, when Star Trek was dead in 2005.
Dead in the water.
It doesn't feel that way.
Yeah. To me, this is like a wonderful gift that Paramount and CBS decided to revive Star Trek. And Brian Fuller is part of that, and there are many other people who should be commended. But it's like, I remember thinking after Enterprise ended, well, one day there'll be a new Star Trek series. I wonder what it will look like. And it's been amazing. I mean, we've had like 4 or 5 Star Trek series, and each one has been different, and they've just been all over the map. This is, I have to say, the golden age of Star Trek. And if you disagree with me, you can disagree with me. That's fine. I mean, you could also say that Next Generation DS9 was the golden age, but I think this is it. I think,
first of all, no one ever disagrees on the internet, so that's fine. But
if you disagree, don't send any mail to me. Send it to you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll make sure it gets to him. But I think you're definitely right. I say in that, in terms of the amount of content, if nothing else, we have never been so spoiled for Star Trek as we are now. And that's even, yes, okay, Picard has come to an end, Discovery is coming to an end, but there are still 3 extra seasons, 5 extra seasons. As it stands, I mean, I know there's a big, there's just a big kind of that shrug emoji over Prodigy, because yes, okay, it's been taken off Paramount, but the season 2 is still in production. So again, touch wood, that is just, it's just a case of
I'm
finding
sure we'll
a
see
new
it
home.
at some point, whether there's a season 3. Hard to say.
John, I'm with you. I think we will absolutely see season 2. It's just in what format, I'm not sure. But it's bonkers, because the last time we even had close to this much content, if you missed it on Monday night, you had to wait until reruns.
Yeah. We've never had Star Trek on demand like this. I mean, just the thought of it as a teenager would have made me giddy. The idea that I could call up any animated episode, like, oh my God, freeze frame on this, work on this ship, or here's an ID card that Nurse Chapel has. I mean, I used to take my Polaroid camera and take shots off the TV on Saturday morning to get stuff like that. And now it's like, it's for the taking. And not only that, in super high definition, so you can see all the little cardboard cutouts that were in an early episode of DS9, many of which were designed by me and cut out by me. It definitely shows that technology has improved vastly, both in terms of what you see on the screen and in terms of delivery of the episodes to you at home. So again, golden age.
There's actually, sorry, Mike, I'll bear with my question for a second. I see you about to ask something there.
I was going to say, you saying that you were taking Polaroids every Saturday morning literally sounds like me after I've watched an episode, going through, going, "Oh, I want to do that," because I've been on this rampage for the last, I want to say, since February, of a wallpaper a week. So I have created an LCARS wallpaper every week since the beginning of February.
Nice.
I've been very privileged, and I feel very honoured that when I ask somebody a question, whether it's Andrew Jarvis, Dave Blass, Mike Okuda on Twitter, or anyone like that, I always get a response.
Yeah,
that's the one
and
thing.
You will from me as well. It's we're all happy to share our work and encourage others to take it in whatever direction they find interesting.
Isn't it? Everybody loves it. Everyone is lovely.
I will say that some of the fan artists you see, like on DeviantArt and just online, on Facebook, are really, really good. Some of it is the technology is a lot better than it ever was in the past, but some of them are like, wow, I couldn't do that. That's really well done. And I think that was what prompted Dave to basically bring a lot of fans on board and use their work in various ways on the show. Once again, Star Trek is promoting or bringing out talent and people that, it's just kind of great to see that it sparks something in artists and writers and all sorts of other creative types.
So from a creative kind of workflow perspective, do you prefer the digital workflows we have now, or do you prefer the older methods on pen and paper and litho? And
I like the way it is now. I'm old enough that when I worked on DS9, we would do backlit graphics with colored scraps of gel.
Yeah.
And I'm the guy that had to glue them down and cut out the little pieces of gel. I mean, that's what the PAs did on DS9. Great experience. It's equivalent to like learning how to edit film by actually cutting the film up and splicing it together, which I also did when I was a student at NYU. And it gives you an understanding of it. But it also is so much easier the way it is now. And that's true for both editing and graphics. As you know, I mean, we can do amazing things with Illustrator and Photoshop. And Andrew Jarvis can do amazing things with After Effects. And then Todd Marks can do amazing things with projection onto like crazy curved screens. I mean, it is really a wonderful opportunity to be creative.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
There's like some, you mentioned just obviously the curved screens there. We actually get to see
just pain. Old.
But it's got because obviously we get, I think we can say that everyone watching and listening to this has probably seen season 3 of Picard. So spoiler, we get the bridge of the Enterprise D, and then but we also, because the reason I mention it like that is because with the Titan A bridge and those wonderful curved screens and all of that imagery, you can actually see 2 generations of how it was done in the same episode, actually, because there's scenes between 7 and the Bridge of the Enterprise D, and it's
not jarring. I mean, it still looks cool. It still looks like Star Trek. I mean, that's testament to Mike Okuda's original designs for Next Generation. They were ahead of their time, and also timeless to a degree that they still look good. And Dave Blass was very certain that he wanted to do LCARs that we saw on Next Generation and not go in a slightly new direction, which I had actually pushed for, because I kind of like, cool looking spheres rotating on screen and that kind of stuff. But he kept saying, well, think of it as vector art. So like, okay, interesting. All right. And then also Andrew Jarvis, who's kind of a genius, was able to come up with his updated version of LCARs, which had the same look, but a lot more depth and flexibility. But I will say that for the Enterprise D, we had, as if I was responsible, we had a lot more going on than you ever saw, either on Next Generation or in Generations. Almost all those screens were actually monitors, and they were moving. It wasn't just like little blinking Christmas tree lights in the background. Or, I mean, we put monitors in for the first time, the D Bridge on Generations, and that was just basically like, a couple of 24-inch television sets in the background. But this was like every single display you could see was capable of showing like motion and complex, fancy things, but you could sort of sense the restraint. It's like, we know we're on the Enterprise D Bridge, so we're not going to do something super flashy and cool.
I think the thing that gets me on that is when you compare TNG graphics, like if you take some of the original backlit panels from TNG and you hold them next to the panels that were used on the recreation of the bridge, they are almost indistinguishable.
I was part of that. I have to say, I did the backlits that were on the D Bridge, or a lot of them. And Mike Okuda would send me his scans of his original printouts, which were all black and white and basically printed out on a laser printer, an HP laser printer back in the day, and pieced together, glued together on a sheet of cardboard, and say, well, we couldn't afford, or we couldn't figure out how to use a fluorescent bulb in that curved railing at the back of the bridge, so we had to use, like, it was basically just a regular incandescent light bulb, and you could see it drop off in sections. And so I said, okay. And I copied the way that it dropped off. We looked at still frames, and we made it look as cheesy as it did on the show. And that was good. I mean, we basically honored the fact that our bridge had to look as much like the original as possible.
So I want to say for that one, hat off to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's like, it was fun recreating all those old graphics in Illustrator, because you could see the initials of various crew members that Mike had put in back in the day. So I just copied them exactly. I also figured that on Picard we might actually see close-ups of the little capsule labels all over the ship. So no more jokes. I took them out.
So that explains.
Like, I actually spoil it for anybody. I mean, that's not good.
Well, no, funny you should mention that, because I think Eagle-eyed Mike.
So these were given to me. I can't mention his name, but these were given to me. These are all leftovers from.
Oh, nice.
So I have some from the Enterprise D. I have some from the Titan. I have some from the Orion set. Some from the Ferengi set.
What you're holding up is mostly by Alan Kobayashi. I did a little bit of that. That's stuff for the District 6 on the planet Metalis. Yes, exactly. I did some of those too, and I did all of the stickers and graphics that you see on the Titan. And then for the Enterprise, they just recreated what they did on the show. But they did use some of the artwork that I had created for Generations, because I can see my birthday a couple of times on the like on the door panels. There's a nice shot of Dr. Crusher standing next to one of the little doorbell panels. And it's like, oh, 8/26/59. That was me. So.
Okay, so I just want to clarify.
Yes, that was me. But.
Well, my mind has just kind of exploded a little bit, but
I mean, I tried to upgrade it a little bit. I mean, just like same, just like we
these
did.
Are genuinely
like
favorite.
Like Andrew did with L-Cars, I tried to upgrade the stickers too. And, we spent a lot of time. That's from one of the original ones from TNG. It is. I mean,
It's got a joke on it,
but I didn't really design it. That's Mike Okuda.
Yeah, these would be Mike's.
Yeah, I might have put my birthday in those as well. It's possible.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one that puts my birthday in things. There's a whole bunch of my wallpapers out there, all have my birthday on them.
No, it's required. It's part of the L-Cars. My birthday or my sister's birthday or my brother's. Yeah, I did design that. That was and it was. I don't know if anyone noticed, but it was foreshadowed in season 2. That's the same logo that was used in the clinic.
Yes.
So the idea was the clinic evolves into this like interstellar Red Cross organization, and that's what the Ilios had on board, or what brought the Ilios into being.
I should really like that, because I think because seasons 2 and 3 are they're so different in so many ways. I do love that connecting thread, because you're right.
Nice.
I think we were watching the first episode, myself and one of my colleagues, Chris, and what we do is we go and we're pen and paper and we see what the Easter eggs are. The pair of us just went, I know that butterfly.
Good. So you saw it. I'm glad that worked out. And they knew it was, they knew it was coming. I mean, they told us, okay, come up with a butterfly logo for the clinic, because we're going to see it again. And we were a little unsure how we were going to see it again, because season 3 kept changing when they brought the original cast back on board. But it paid off nicely. And I think that's one of the things that Star Trek does really well. It manages to keep continuity as much as possible, and not just throw everything to the wind and start over again.
That is
as tempting as that might be for some.
Yeah, well, I mean, because we've seen, haven't we? We've seen it's an alternate universe. Grant, okay, cool. Do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and we've seen an alternate universe, anything goes, and that's super fun. But you don't have to worry about necessarily being continuity, unless I guess the mirror universe nowadays you have to keep continuity in that. So it's like
that one feels like it's been almost overcomplicated. It was nice and straightforward.
I mean, I kind of hope they never go back to the Confederation, because that'll be a big challenge. But whatever, we'll see. I wouldn't mind a few new universes, and then they can employ me to come up with a whole new Starfleet logo and Federation logo and everything.
I love. There's a great gag in Futurama from years ago, and they're talking about this idea of a multiverse. But it's directly riffing on obviously the mirror universe, and the professor's explaining everything. Yeah, Bender's the ghost. Yes, I love it. Yeah, they're professor's riffing on everything, and then Leela goes, "Oh my god, there's this infinite number of universe." No, just the 2. Which I thought was like, oh my god, that is perfect, because what are the odds that they would keep finding their way back to the same mirror universe? And I love it. It's just like
there's at least 3, because there's the Kelvin universe, and then there's the Confederation. So more than that, I think that's about it.
Then there's that episode of Next Generation Parallels that's just like, I'm not even going to count. There's quite a few, and we're going to leave it at that.
Oh, and I guess there's also the Yesterday's Enterprise. So it seems like in all those other universes, things are not going well. We're lucky to be in a relatively good universe.
We do seem to be in the brightest timeline.
Yeah, we're fortunate.
It's like, it could
so far, fingers crossed. I mean, Eugenics War hasn't happened yet. We're still.
I love the way you say yet.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually something I really enjoyed in Strange New Worlds, that they did what we've been talking about, sort of just off camera for a long time, and like explain why eugenics war didn't happen, why we don't know who Khan Noonien Singh is, why there's no Botany Bay. And it's a perfectly good explanation. And we actually did the same thing in season 2 of Picard. We had Data's ancestor kind of pull out of the drawer and dust off Project Khan, based back in '96, and saying, oh, well, maybe it's time to try this again. So you can just assume that the same thing is happening, but now because of minor changes to the time stream or major changes to the time stream, it's happening 30 years later, or maybe even 50 years later. And of course, that affects everything. And we may end up seeing original series episodes remade in Strange New World style. I don't know. I mean, I would like that personally, but it's up to greater minds than me to decide how to go forward with Star Trek.
Was it the PTB of Strange New Worlds at the moment? But yeah, it's refreshing as well that like yourself, people we have been following Trek for as long as we have, that because I personally was totally fine with that. Changes in the timeline, it changes around the order of things.
Absolutely.
I think, of course, because I remember, I think it was Dave Blass. We were having a chat. He very kindly came on. He was one of the first people to say yes to the podcast, and he spoke about exactly that. So this was before season 3 had dropped. So it was talking about season 2 and this idea of Project Khan, the eugenics wars. Is that when they were writing Star Trek in the 1960s? I mean, 2020, that's 60 years away. I sure God we can't think that far ahead. And then, of course, here we are. And
even 1990 was crazy far future for them.
And it was like this idea of
even when they did Wrath of Khan, the movie, that was still comfortably far in the distance. But Star Trek has legs. It's stuck around longer than I think anyone thought it would. So the way that they dealt with that in Strange New Worlds, by having the young Khan, just about now or maybe a few years from now, I think is a lovely way to do it. And it also opens up all sorts of fun possibilities for maybe seeing Khan again on time travel episodes, or I don't know, maybe Lon gets to meet Khan. I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure they're thinking about it.
I feel like there's been so much, obviously we've had Khan, but there's been so much, about the name. I really do feel they're setting up some sort of showdown between Lon and Khan.
Yeah. I don't have any insight into the showrunners of Strange New Worlds, but they're both really smart guys. And they're both big Star Trek fans. So they're constantly thinking of ways to use stuff that we know and love. I mean, just seeing, I don't want to say any spoilers, but seeing a face we recognized in the final season finale of Strange New Worlds was just such a joy. It's like, hey, he's back. So.
I think actually by the time this podcast airs, I think we'll be okay when it comes to when it comes. Mike, sorry, I woke up to a text yesterday that it was just that name in block capitals and lots of exclamation marks. So yes,
you can drop the audio on that last part if you want. It's up to you.
It's fine. It's great.
They're treating it the way I would like it to be treated, all the historical references. And at the same time, they're taking it in a new direction. They're showing, like crazy new rooms we never saw on the Enterprise. And because they can afford to build them, or they can afford to do a monitor recreation in the background. And I think it's great. I mean, to me, that would have been my preference for how the JJ movie should have been, with a lot of heart anchored in the original Star Trek, but with design maybe taken in a slightly new direction. And I think they kind of maybe, what's the word? Rolled the dice a few too many times and created a few too many things that didn't need to be recreated. That's a good way of saying it. I think
that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, and again, that is when you're working in an existing property and, you're like, right, we're going to do different, but there is a balance, I think, and there will always be. I mean, I know myself. I watched Star Trek 9, and I was sitting there with my dad, and there was the bits we absolutely loved, like Carl Urban was just a laugh riot all the way through because he was channeling DeForest Kelley, and there was some bits that were a bit like, that's there because it's cool, as opposed to having a reason to be there.
You're talking about the lens flares. Yep.
I mean, yes, we had actually. Michael backed me up on this. We had we were talking to one of the people involved in making the lens flares work there a couple of weeks ago, and it's actually, I will be straight with you, I thought it was all digital. Apparently, a lot of it was somebody on set with a lamp, and I went, "I'll give him this. It's dedication."
It didn't bother me, but it has become kind of a meme on the internet for the JJ verse. All good, but I think I'm happy with the current versions of Star Trek as seen on TV. I think they honor the original enough and yet take it in new directions. Like Leonard Nimoy says, don't worry so much about canon. Think about where Star Trek wants to take you now. And it is taking you in new directions, which I think is great. Otherwise, there'd be no reason to do Star Trek shows, I don't think.
I think that's one of the things that the newer streaming Star Trek shows have done extremely well. They have carried it forward, kept it tasteful and logical. Gonna channel my inner Spock. But they have. If you take those Kelvin universes, I agree, they have rolled that dice a few too many times. Whereas the TV shows, I don't know if they're a little more restrained, but they are truer to the Trek of old.
They found that balance, and it maybe is a little bit better for all of us, or most of us. I mean, you could say that season 1 of Discovery also went maybe a little too far into the wacky zone with the new Klingons and stuff. But, Star Trek is flexible enough. It can take new ideas. It can take new variations on old species that we know and love. We just, need to have open minds and accept it and not get angry when it doesn't quite match what we think it should be.
But then you could say the same thing about TNG, because Klingons in the original series are very different.
And I think, I don't know for a fact. I had this discussion with Rod Roddenberry once. Gene Roddenberry, I think, wanted the Klingons to have the bumps the whole time. He just couldn't really afford to do it. And they didn't have the technology to do it on the original series. Rod said, I said that was my theory. That was based on a very brief conversation I had with Gene at the premiere of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And Rod said, well, he didn't know. He didn't have any information on that. But I think basically that in Gene's mind, Klingons always look like that with their ridges and the.
I think as well. And I think, it benefited. It makes it look more alien. And I know it's been said by many people smarter than me, but I do. Yeah, I like them having alien. Yes. Discovery was a bit like, okie dokie, all right, okay, here's very alien Klingons.
They're different, yeah.
Oh.
And maybe this is like a Klingon subspecies that lives on the southern continent of Kronos. Who knows? Anything is possible. We will find out.
One of my favorite lines about the Romulans in Star Trek Picard was, Laris flicking the other Romulan on the head because he has the ridges because he's a bloody northerner. Of course, we love Laris, Irish.
I do love Laris. He's great.
Now, you have been so grateful with your time. So grateful with your time? So generous. We're grateful for your generosity. Sorry, I got totally tongue-tied there. So thank you so much. I've two more questions for you myself. So before I jump into them, Mike, do you have anything that you're burning to ask that you haven't asked yet?
No, go on. All yours, Sean.
Grant. Okay, so my second to last question is, so you were mentioning that, so sometimes you go back and you could see some of the cardboard cutouts, particularly from Deep Space Nine. Now, obviously, if we go back to DS9, it was filmed with the technology of the time, but it had a beautiful, not complete, unfortunately, but a beautiful bit of a remaster for the documentary, What We Left Behind. Was there anything from that remastered footage that you were able to go, I am delighted that's now in 4K?
I'm more cringe when I see the remastered footage because I'm afraid I'll see something that I did that looks crappy, like a last minute tape up job on a prop that they brought you like 20 minutes before it had to go down to set. Um, for the most part, nothing has like jumped out at me and scared me. I think of like the stains on the uniforms in the original Star Trek once those were converted to high def. And there is a lot of like, I'll just give you an example. The DS9 episode Past Tense with those
Oh yeah.
ID cards they had in the Sanctuary District. Those are the crappiest looking things you will ever see on any TV show. I won't say who actually designed them. I might have had a little something to do with that, but it's like you can see like the tape where the barcode should be. It's just, I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that back in the day we thought was never going to be seen or seen in the background at great distance, and we see it like right close-ups. So that makes me cringe a little bit.
That's okay. I think there's sometimes we look back on our old stuff and we're all like, oh
Yeah.
there was some choices there. But
And we had no choice sometimes. I mean, you literally have like, okay, you've got 30 minutes before this goes on set, so do what you can. And we did our best.
And I would say, look, I mean, obviously I'm slightly biased. I'm a bit of a Trekkie. I think you fairly smashed it. You fairly did a great job, and you seem to be continuing to do a great job. And in the Star Trek Legacy that you confirmed for us there earlier on, we shall look forward to seeing more of your work as well. Yeah, you heard it here first.
I would love
confirmed.
that if it happens, and that's again up to greater minds than me. I think if asked, I would love to contribute to any new version of Star Trek. But it's like, if this is all there is, that's also great. I mean, I had a good run.
I think that's true as well. I mean, sorry, you did have a good run and will continue to have a good run. That's not what I'm saying. But what's true as well is that there is a lot of just fabulous, fabulous content to consume between Legacy Trek, the streaming Trek at the moment. It's been a good time to be a Trekkie.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a very good time.
Now, which brings me to my final question. So this is the question that we ask every single one of our guests. No pressure, no thought required for this one. Geoffrey Mandel, what does Star Trek mean to you?
It just means optimism for the future. It means a hopeful science fiction reality, and there are so many dystopian science fiction versions that Star Trek was able to like find the one thread of hopefulness for humanity, and it is unmatched in terms of any other speculative fiction or TV show or movie that I'm aware of.
I love
Does that work?
Okay. It absolutely works. Yep, I love it. And actually, maybe this won't be so surprising is how communal that answer tends to be. A lot of people, that's what they find in Star Trek. Certainly I find it myself. And I know, Mike, we've spoken about it before. I know that is this idea of hope, this optimism that things will get better. Sure, we have a couple of eugenics wars to go through first, but things will get better.
Yeah. What time will tell whether that's true or not, but at least it gives us something to aspire toward, and hope for. So fingers crossed, things will get better.
Plus, it's only like 40 years till the Vulcans get here. So, I mean, we're laughing.
Maybe we could get them to come a little earlier and help us out with that eugenics war. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that'd be good. Mike, if you could just design something, some sort of nice message that we could send them, that would be great.
Definitely.
That would be fun to see a message current humans send to Vulcan saying, hey guys, what's taking you so long?
Password is ooby dooby. Right, okay, with that, Geoffrey, thank you so much. You're a gentleman. This has been wonderful. Just before we go, if anyone listening to this wants to reach out to see your work, to get in touch, where is the best place to contact you and to find your body of work?
That's an excellent question. Probably Facebook, because I do post. As an old person, I post quite often on Facebook, and lot of my fellow Star Trek employees also are on Facebook, so we like it. Not really on Instagram, not really on Twitter. You could, I don't know what else I could tell you. That's pretty much it.
Well,
yeah,
that's so. What we'll do is we'll put the link to your Facebook in the description of this
Please
episode, and then people will
and
be
if anybody
inundating
wants
you.
to buy any of my the brand new science fiction spaceship prints I just put on Etsy, that would also be delightful. But there's a link to it on my Facebook page. I'll send you also a link to that. This is kind of a strike property or a strike project for me to try to have a little bit of something going on. So I've done limited edition prints of various science fiction spaceships, some Star Trek, many not, and selling them on an Etsy store. And you can delete this whole segment if you want to. That's fine.
Oh no, we're all in.
They are absolutely stunning. Sorry, I have just found them.
Oh, did you? Okay, good. Oh, I'm glad that searches work. Yeah, no, it's. I've been doing. They started out as a pandemic project and have become a strike project, and I'm just enjoying doing kind of like illustrations of classic science fiction spaceships and offering them as prints.
Yeah, that's a fabulous idea.
Anyway, thank you for letting me get the plug-in.
Not at all. Thank you for sharing. Now we're going to bring it up to time there. Thank you so much again, Mike. Obviously, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and join us. And likewise, where can people find your wallpapers and all this kind of this cool content you're putting out as well?
I now have a website, alcarsworkshop.com, where all my papers and there's custom work available up there as well, such as ship dedication plaques and links to some funky merch.
You better not take my job on the next Star Trek. I'm gonna come after you.
I would happily.
There's plenty of work for all. There's plenty of work for all. It's all good.
I just feel like I'm just sitting here. I am the demilitarized zone, and okay. So, and you can argue it out between yourselves as to who's the Cardassians and who's the Federation.
No worry. If it's anything like Picard, there's work for a good half a dozen, if not more, graphic designers. So we're all going to be busy if there's a new Star Trek series.
And I will learn how to draw. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone, of course, who has watched and listened along with us. We will, of course, be back next week with another episode of The War Room. I have been Sean. I'm on all the various socials. You don't really have to go far to find me. I tend to just be kicking in the door. You're all awesome and wonderful, and most importantly, live long and prosper.
Same to you.